if you are thinking about career transitions, if you are thinking that I need to understand how to go about my career, what is the next step in my career, we have some amazing career advice for you today. Because we have with us an amazing guest, David Petrov. He's a career counselor, a life coach, a career coach, and he is a thought leader in the art of reinvention in careers. Now, we will get into his details, but before that, let me tell you a little bit about Luxury Unplugged Podcast, the space where we redefine luxury and we go beyond material possessions. We explore freedom, authenticity, and the courage to live aligned with who we truly are, and therefore perhaps the need for career transitions. I'm your host, Neeti Keswani, best selling author, a storytelling coach, and a business mentor. And we help you shift your inner narrative as well as your brand story so that your businesses are rooted in purpose and fulfillment. Okay, now let's get started with David Petrove. Welcome, David. Welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you, David. It's just amazing with over 2 decades of experience guiding people through career transitions and personal development. You have a powerful blend of wisdom and compassion, and we are so ready to get started with, practical strategies for what you have to offer.
Well, I'm ready to share those.
All right. So, David, you have guided countless people through career transitions. Now, can you share some pivotal moments where you knew it was time to reinvent yourself after burnout?
Needy, there is the key word, burnout. I was just thinking about that prior to our podcast today. And
Uh-huh.
what was it that caused me to make a change after 34 years of being in the same field? And it was definitely burnout. And I knew it. And I've actually done webinars on burnout
Right.
and how to deal with it. And even at looking at what those tools are for addressing it, I thought I could have probably applied all of them and it wouldn't have changed the fact that I knew I was burned out. And what happened that really identified that for me was my workday. And as soon as that clock hits 4, I'm out the door. I guess that's a way to put it. I just knew that my passion for what I had been doing was gone. That was the time where I realized it was time to make a change.
Right. And I guess it happened with all of us at some point in time when we realize that this is not something that I really want to do for the rest of my life, right? So, do you suggest that we need to be aware of those ticking bombs that come along the way that
Ab-
make you realize?
yes, I think that being a clock watcher is one indication that you're burning out. You dread the beginning of the work week. Okay. Oh, I have to go back to work again. How quickly will Friday come so that I'm out the door doing things that I enjoy? This is not what I enjoy. I think that, you look at your interaction with coworkers.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying your interactions, or do you wish that your life at work was very different in terms of who those people were and what your life was like with them? Because I think if you're spending a significant amount of time at work, you want to enjoy the people around you. Okay. You don't always have to agree with them, but there has to be some level of satisfaction with, oh, I enjoy these people. And the other thing that happened was after I left that last position, I did not maintain contact with anyone from work. So that says a lot. Whereas in previous situations, I did. And in some cases, I still do after years of being separated from that. So I think these are the kinds of things that you want to look at. What are your stress levels? Because one of the things I learned through counseling was when you leave a job that's toxic, your body needs to release those toxins. And it's not unusual that people will come down with something serious after they separate from that job. For me, I came down with pneumonia. I'd never had pneumonia, and I had it for over a month before it was diagnosed. So that was I knew that that was my body's way of having to release all that I had stored up within me. And that can be the price we pay for staying in a job that is not aligned with who we are, as you were saying.
Right. But in that case, David, you have pointed out two very important things in this conversation. One is that the burnout aspect. So, when you said that we have to be in good companionship, we need to have at least a decent interaction with our colleagues. That talks a lot about emotional intelligence, right? Because it has to be on our end as well as their end. So, What we can't do is something about how they handle the situation, but we can definitely work on ourselves. What do you have to say about that as a career coach in terms of being emotionally intelligent?
Well, I think that, there are so many aspects of that that we don't consider in terms of what happens in the workplace, Nikki, because you look at the focus being on just intelligence in general, just how smart you are. That has nothing to do with your ability to problem solve effectively with people. The other one is empathy. And I find that, even though I was in the field of education where you would think that empathy would abound, it didn't. And so those kinds of skills related to social intelligence, the ability to listen effectively to others, those are keys. And actually, studies have shown that two of the characteristics of effective leaders are good listening skills and empathy.
Right, right. So, David, when you go through now career counseling for others, you help your students, your clients on that path. Do you help them overcome that kind of toxicity that they have stored in themselves before they take up a new role?
No, that's a great question.
Mm.
And it's probably something that I do unconsciously. And just what we do is we talk about what is the culture that you fit best into. And it's going to be different for each person. And if you go into an environment that doesn't match that, chances are you're going to be facing toxicity. It is not going to feed who you are in a positive way. So again, there's this old statement about know yourself. It goes back thousands of years, Needy. And so that's what I help people to do. Know yourself and what your best fit would be. We spend a lot of time on what type of climate best feeds who you are and what you bring to the table. So, are
Right.
you a person who enjoys a lot of your work time alone? And there's nothing wrong with that. There are people who they function best that way. And
Mhm.
if you're around other people, what do you want your colleagues and supervisors to look like? What values do you want to share with them? And we take a look a lot at what those value systems are, because clearly that is something that you need to consider. Because
Mhm.
when you're out of alignment with your values, it's not going to work for you.
Right, right. So definitely there's a role of mindset and emotional intelligence in all these career transitions, as well as in the workplace that you're in currently. You may not be looking for a career transition, but you definitely want to upscale, you want to get promoted and stuff like that. So as part of your career coaching, what sort of tools and techniques do you use to help people with that?
In order to identify who they are and how they might move up,
Yes.
I think part of it is where people see themselves in terms of their career path. Are they a person who says, I absolutely love the work that I do, and I could see myself continuing to do this throughout my work life? Or, I've been gaining experience and growing my skills, and I'd like to apply those at the next level. And what would that look like? Because I do have clients who are excellent in their current positions, have no desire to move up. So, what we focus on is how can you be the best at what you currently do? What are some of the problems, some of the challenges you might be facing that we could work together on that would make your life better? Many of them are communication skills and how you make sure that those are being addressed. Because if they're not, now you're on the road to burnout. So I think it's really what I do is meet clients where they are. I need to listen very, very carefully to what they want from their work life. Do you want to move up? Now, where I tend to focus most is individuals who are in mid management positions with the coaching,
Right.
because that's what I was in. That's what I can identify with in
Mhm.
terms of those challenges and obstacles. So we can talk about okay, if you plan to move up, what skills, what experience will you need to have to be effective in that role? And what do you see that role as? What would you be doing in that position? How could you make a difference in terms of where the company currently is and where you could see yourself taking it?
Right. Also, I feel that, in terms of when we do career coaching, when we help people in terms of becoming more valuable as an asset to the company that you're working for, there is a definite influence of, mindfulness tools, techniques. There is law of attraction. How comfortable are you them with your clients, and how do you, if you are, then how do you imbibe that in your coaching practices?
So that again is a function of listening. Client will give you clues, okay,
Uh-huh.
as what their receptivity is.
Right.
Something like the law of attraction, the spiritual aspect of what you do. If I start to hear those clues, then we can address it. I'll use words like manifesting.
Right.
Someone talks about the universe. Okay. Those are words that I listen for. If they're not there, then chances are that client is not in that space to where they are going to be open to having that type of a discussion. So it's really, again, meeting them where they are. Yes, when they are open to that, it just opens a whole different conversation to where we
Right.
can go with it. But it's
Right.
really, and no matter what their beliefs are around that needy, it's about their ability to take care of themselves. How are you taking care of yourself in this situation? And, again, a lot of individuals don't know how to do self care.
True. True.
And they'll say, well, I need to be putting in 15-hour days in order to survive in today's workplace.
Right. Another aspect that I feel that you might have some ideas on is how to use LinkedIn for the aspects of client scouting as well as for the understanding of which is the right company that I can work with if I am a career coach.
Well, that's interesting too, because a number of years ago, I might have gone onto LinkedIn once every 6 or 7 months. I just did not use it.
Huh.
Today, it is something that I do on a daily basis. One of my goals is to grow my network. I have definite goals in terms of numbers, and I work toward that, plan on that growing even more.
Right.
Then again, the way LinkedIn works for me, it'll send me job openings. And I think, okay, how good of a fit would this be for me? So if you proceed with caution, really be helpful. If you're seeing what we call red flags,
Right.
pay attention to them. Too good to be true. And you may pay dearly for that out of pocket. Yes.
Right. So what you're saying is that use LinkedIn, but be more cautious of the kind of networking connections you make and the kind of opportunities that you get. You have to be wary of them, right? So in terms of coming back to, the way you're seeing career fulfillment happening for you, what is your process? Are you doing group coachings or are you doing personal one-to-one coachings?
One-to-one, I do now. I do a number of webinars or a form of group coaching. And so we cover, for instance, the content of my book, the first one that I've published.
What's the
And
name?
the book title is Out of Work, Not Out of Worth, Navigating the Emotional Side of Job Loss.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a lot of emphasis placed on how to write the perfect resume, how to ace the interview, how to be a great networker, but they don't talk about what people go through emotionally. And someone just said to me yesterday, do you think maybe the reason why you don't get a lot of people attending is because they don't want to look at the emotional side of it? I said, well, that very well could be. It just, as soon as you're out of work, immediately hit the pavement, start putting those resumes out there and start dealing with all the rejections that come with that.
Right.
And then there goes your whole sense of self-confidence, everything else that we talk about in the book. But the book is really great, Needy, because what it does is it provides exercises for each of the 5 areas that we've identified and help
Right.
people grow in those areas. The biggest area, self-confidence.
Self-confidence. Right. So that's what I was coming to. Like, what are the 5 areas and how do we go about it in the book? That somebody will have to grab it from the link that we will be sharing in the description. But for now, what are the 5 areas that you talk broadly? One is self-confidence, definitely.
Self-confidence, perseverance, the willingness to continue, acceptance, going through the grieving process of what happens when you no longer have a job that you thought you might have been a perfect match for. There's a
Mhm.
loss that's attached to that. And it's going through that process of acceptance related to it, all the
Right.
feelings that surround it. And then the next one is resilience, the
Right.
ability to bounce back when you get those rejection letters or you hear nothing at all. And that's another common experience for people. They send all of these applications out and hear nothing. It goes
Mm,
out into what we call the black hole. And then
mm.
finally, commitment. How committed are you to getting this job, to showing people what your value is in the work that you do. So those would be the 5 areas. And again, they all have exercises attached to them. And there's also a workbook that goes along with it so that if you're part of a support group, you can take that workbook and go through the exercises together as a way to structure that.
Right. Okay. So it's a practical book where people can go through some exercises and they can actually practice the emotional side where they might be lacking now because of the kind of hardship that they have gone through.
Yes, it is a hardship. Yeah, unless you have just a terrible, terrible job and being released from that job, you see as a sense of relief and you're celebrating that it's no longer there. For
Mm,
most people, that's not their experience.
right.
One of the common feelings that people talk about, and in fact, when I was a career advisor at a local employment agency, betrayal. And that's interesting how often that shows up for people. Look, I was loyal to you for all these years, and this is how you treat me. You send me an email or a text message that says you no longer are working here.
Right.
And that really brings up a whole different set of supporting feelings, like anger.
And so then when they come for career counseling, how do you handle these kind of things? It cannot happen overnight, right? But what is your process of handling these kind of situations when people are going through anger or betrayal or frustration, perhaps?
We talk about it because they need an opportunity, in some cases, needing to just vent. And I give them one of the exercises that I love to give people when they're in that space is I say to them, I want you to write a letter to either the company or an individual person, and I want you, no holds barred. You can use every 4-letter word that you've ever learned. You just vent that anger. Get it out of you. Get those toxins out. And then what I have them do is I say, okay, now I want you to one of 2 things. You can put the letter in an envelope and to whomever, put a stamp on it, put it in the mailbox. Or you can take it to a safe place, and I've done this, where you light a match to it and you let it go out into the universe to do what it needs to do. And they'll say, well, if I write a letter, how is it going to get to them? You're writing the letter for you, not for them. And when they do it, they come back with such a sense of well-being. I'm so glad that I did that. And that's out of the way. In some cases, they've had to write more than one letter, depending on the impact of what that was like for them.
Right, right. Okay, so it's very interesting. In one of our other interviews as well, we talked about letter writing. Now, this coach suggested she's a relationship and a career coach, a confidence coach as well. So she suggested writing a letter to her future self, to your future self, and talk about that and keep that letter with you and keep on reading it every day. And you also talk about letter writing, but to vent out. So it is kind of usage of, I think, mindfulness in perhaps journaling to some extent.
Yes. Yeah, and I've also done the other, by the way.
Mhm.
What I do is I'll say, okay, I want you to write a letter to your future self. And I want you to write it as if a year from now, that is your actual life.
Mhm.
I've done that with myself and I described it in detail. And I said, and a year from now, okay, I'm having a housewarming party with all of my friends to celebrate my new surroundings. And you don't open it until a year later. Okay. You can mail it to yourself. You put a note, okay, mail this a week or 2 before, but you don't open it up until that day. I opened it needy. And guess what?
What was happening?
I was having a housewarming with all of my friends in this beautiful home. Now, one thing I didn't do that you have to be careful with manifesting, I didn't say that I owned the home. It turned out that it was a rental. Okay. But it was a beautiful rental. I stayed there for a year and a half before the owners decided to sell it. It led to the journey that has brought me to the beautiful home I live in today, which was also something that I identified with all of the aspects that I wanted. This,
Right.
I always say,
This was something more beautiful. Beautiful. So you did manifest something. It may or may not be the exact ideal thing, but it could be better than what you had expected, right?
yes.
Now, this is so beautiful. So we have now talked about the law of attraction aspect. We've talked about the spirituality aspect because these are the things which happen at the subconscious level, right? But when we are in the workplace situation, when we are meeting people, the discussions, the conversations, and the work wants us to be in terms of, excuse me. So the work itself requires us to be, talking about things very practically. So, how to have that balance between being very practical at work and being spiritual at heart?
Oh, I'm not sure that they are really separate. I really believe that, it's very interesting because one of the questions you asked was on the journey, was there a moment that shifted everything for you?
Yes.
And I gave a lot of thought to that. Is the moment that I made a conscious decision. Well, I still remember it like it was yesterday that I was not going to drink alcohol anymore. And that was 36 years ago. Okay. And when I made that decision, it led me to learning how to live a spiritual life that I could take into all aspects of what I do. And so in doing that, it took me into the workplace and it gave me structure. How do I deal with my own accountability and responsibility when I make a mistake? Is it something that I blame someone else for? Or do I take full responsibility when it's mine to take and say, you know what? That was a mistake on my part. I'm sorry for any problems that it would have caused. And see, that's spirituality. It's about connection. That's really what spirituality is recognizing that we're all connected to one another, whether we like it or not. And it's just a fact of life. So when I'm dealing with a difficult person,
Yeah.
I have to take a look at what is it about them that's causing a problem for me? And is this person a mirror for me where I need to take a look at some aspect of my life and how that is working or not working and then make the necessary changes? So I
Right.
think there's that mix of the practicality and the spirituality. I found that in using that approach, I was pretty effective in what I did. So that when I left it, it wasn't that I was a poor performer. It was that I was burned out on being a high performer. And the other thing is a part of that atmosphere that you look at is, am I a person who enjoys receiving some type of recognition for the work that I do? And if you find that you're in a work environment where that's not happening, they're only pointing out the negative, then you have to take a serious look at that. And
Right.
there's some practicality and spirituality that are working together. And then to say, you know what? Like I said, after 34 years, it was time. I knew it was time for me to move on. I had received awards for the work that I had done. I had governors come to my classroom to see how I worked as a teacher. And yet I would also get from someone who was a director who had an office across from my classroom, by the way, you need to change things. There's too much laughter coming out of your classroom from your students. And I thought, I'm not going to change that because
Right.
those students are now in their 50s and they're still in touch with me and tell me how much they enjoy being in my classroom. And
Right.
that to me was more important than someone above saying, there's too much laughter. Well, close your door. If you don't like the laughter, just close your door. So again, it's who you are and living up to who you are in spite of what people around you might be saying.
Beautiful. So, in a way, you touched one of my core subjects, which is reframing the story. So, you do help people in reframing their inner story as well as outer story in some way or the other, right?
Oh, yeah, I just had a conversation with someone on that, and she was talking about her life, and I said, that's called reframing. And remember, every story is just your version of a story.
Right.
Now, I know for myself, stories that I absolutely believed were true, years, decades later, I spoke to the person who was also a part of that story, and they said, where did you ever get that? Never happened. And look, for decades, I carried that story around as if it was a true story. I can reframe it. You can always retell a story.
Right.
If you're going to do that and you have a choice, why not create something beautiful that was a part of that as opposed to what was negative?
Right, right. That's beautiful. So David, you have talked about the aspects of, authentically owning your story. You have talked about how you were laid off and stuff like that. What about people around you? Were you at any point of time afraid of being judged?
Well, Needy, I'm human. Of course, that's going to cross my mind about how other people might judge me or think of me. But the nice thing about being my age, and I'm 76, okay, is that you say to yourself, who cares? That's their story around what I've shared with them. And
Mm.
oftentimes, what I find out or don't find out, and I do know from my experience, is that many times those judgments are based on their fears. And my job is not to fix their fears. I can certainly be aware of them and how they are coloring the types of judgments that they would have about me. And you think about something as simple as when I left my last major position, I turned in my resignation with no plan. And we talked about that. And someone might say, how could you do that? Oh, I would never leave a job like that. Why? It was based on their fear that if they did something like that, there'd be nothing waiting for them. So that's most of the time where judgment comes from. It's a fear.
Right, right. And it's a very subconscious level thing that happens to others as well as us. But thank you so much for that question because, when you said that, who cares? It just shows the kind of relief that anybody should feel if they're not feeling, and they should still go on with their life the way they have planned it. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
So that brings me to, closing reflections. I mean, if you were to go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, that was the other thing that I just wrote about this morning. And it says, what brought you to where you are today? And my life, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to judge it, Nidhi, was trial and error. So rather than having a plan, and what I've learned is when it's trial and error, it reminds me of there was a one-celled creature, organism that would just bounce off a wall. And then that would change its direction until it bounced off another wall. And
Right.
that was my life. I just didn't know how to make decisions and I didn't have a plan. Now in my life, I have a plan. There and now it needs to be flexible, not set in stone as new opportunities present themselves. But clearly, when we lack direction, how do we know when we've arrived there? Okay. So I think, yeah, if there was advice I'd give to my younger self, it's first of all, know who you are, accept who you are, and based upon that, have a plan for what you want your life to look like. Because one of the other questions had to do with what does luxury mean to you on a soul level? So, surrounding myself with beauty. I do. The home I live in is beautiful. When I travel, I go to beautiful cities, going off to Paris again next month. And the last time we were there, stayed in a beautiful hotel that we've actually seen in the movies. Okay. It was 2 doors down from the Louvre.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, this is the life that I am meant to live. And then the plan for how you create that life. That's the manifesting. That's the law of attraction. And I have so many stories about how things have manifested that in a way, my only plan was the arrival. The journey, the destination, I had to leave open. What's happened is just so exciting. And that's another piece of advice for your listeners. Open to life. It will give you incredible opportunities if you're open to them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow. Really enjoyed the conversation today, David. Thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it. And so many nuggets of wisdom we had along the line today because we talked about your journey from, a long career, leaving behind the burnout, reinventing with authenticity. We talked about the very essence of courage and reframing your story and living in a way that is aligned to what you really want practically. So it's been a beautiful conversation, a very engaging one, I would say, and I really enjoyed it.
Likewise.